On the last day anyone would ever touch it, a man in a white pressure suit closed a ring of bolts by hand. He was working against the curve of the telescope's back end, high above the rolling Earth, and the tool in his glove turned slowly, because everything up there turns slowly. Below him, the planet went by in silence. In front of him was a fixture that had not been there when he arrived. A metal ring about 6 feet across, seated against the telescope's hull and locked down tight. It was not an instrument. It did not take pictures. It could not see anything. It was a docking ring, a place for a spacecraft to grab hold. And the spacecraft it was built for did not exist. Nobody had funded it. Nobody had drawn it. It was a handle, bolted onto the back of Hubble, for a visitor who might, someday, come. That was May of 2009. 2 years later, the only kind of ship that could ever have reached that ring stopped flying. And in the years since that astronaut turned that last bolt, nothing has come. No ship, no visitor, no return. The ring is still up there tonight. It is still facing outward, into the dark, its navigation markers pointed at an empty sky, waiting for something we promised, with our own hands, would come back. I want to tell you what that ring was really for, because it was built to do two things, and they are opposite things. Start with what makes this telescope different from almost everything else that has ever gone into orbit. We did not just launch Hubble. We went back to it, again and again and again. It launched on April 24th, 1990, aboard the Space Shuttle Discovery, and it climbed to an orbit of a little over 600 kilometers, high for a telescope meant to watch the universe without the blur of our own air in the way. It was the most ambitious eye we had ever built, and within weeks, it turned out to be nearly blind. The main mirror had been ground to the wrong shape. Not by much. By an amount smaller than a human hair, spread across a curve 2.5 meters wide. But in optics, that is everything. The images came back soft, smeared, wrong. The most expensive telescope in history could not focus. For a while, Hubble was an embarrassment orbiting overhead. Here is where the whole story turns on a decision most machines never get. We did not write it off. In December of 1993, astronauts flew up to it, caught it, folded it into the cargo bay of a shuttle, and over 5 spacewalks, gave it a set of corrective optics. They fixed its eyesight by hand, in orbit, wearing gloves. The next images Hubble sent home were sharp. The blind telescope could see. And then we kept coming back. In 1997. In 1999, an emergency visit after its gyroscopes failed, and it could no longer hold still enough to point. In 2002, 5 times in all, human beings launched, caught up with this one machine, opened it, and worked inside it, replacing parts, upgrading instruments, changing batteries, warming it back to life. No other great observatory has ever been treated this way. The others we launch, we use, and we let go. Hubble is the one we return to, the one we kept fixing, the one we refused, 5 separate times, to leave to its fate. And there is a physical fact underneath all that tenderness that you need to hold on to, because everything later depends on it. Hubble has no engine. None. It cannot move itself an inch. Every time it ever climbed higher in the sky, it was because a human ship arrived, took hold of it, and pushed. Left alone, it does only one thing. It falls. We think of space as empty. Up where Hubble flies, it very nearly is, but not quite, and the not quite is the whole problem. Even a few hundred kilometers up, there are still a few thin wisps of our atmosphere. Not enough to breathe, not enough to feel, but enough. Every second, Hubble plows through that faint haze at roughly 8 kilometers a second, and every second, that whisper of air steals a little of its speed. Lose speed, and you lose altitude. It is the gentlest possible braking, a feather's worth of drag, but it never stops, and it never sleeps, and it has been happening every second of every day for 36 years. So the servicing missions were never only about the instruments. Each time a shuttle went up and grabbed Hubble before it let go, it nudged the telescope higher, gave it back the altitude the air had quietly taken. We lifted it, and the sky pulled it down, and we lifted it again. That was the arrangement. That was the deal, unspoken but real. As long as the ship kept coming, the telescope would keep flying. There was a time we imagined an even deeper version of that promise. In the early years, before it ever flew, some of the plans on the drawing board pictured bringing Hubble all the way home, down out of orbit, into a shuttle's bay, back to Earth for a full refit on the ground, then launched again. Round trips. That idea was set aside as too costly, and we chose to fix it in orbit instead. But sit with what it means that we drew it at all. We built this thing already planning to come back for it. Return was part of the design from the beginning. Now, do the arithmetic that nobody wanted to do out loud. It launched above 600 kilometers. The air has been pulling on it, unopposed, since the last time a ship touched it in 2009. The independent trackers who watch these things now put it well below 500 kilometers and still dropping. And the fall is not steady. It speeds up. The lower it goes, the thicker the air, and the thicker the air, the faster it comes down. Every mile it loses is a mile no one is up there to give back. That is the quiet trouble underneath a beautiful machine. Not that it is broken. It works. Its eyes are still sharp. It is still sending back some of the finest pictures of the universe ever made. The problem is not the telescope. The problem is that the arrangement that kept it up, someone will come, someone will lift it, quietly expired, and the sky did not. So why did we stop coming? Not because we stopped caring. This is the part of the story that is easy to get wrong, and I want to get it right. The road home was cut, twice, by the same people who loved the telescope most. The first cut came on the morning of February 1st, 2003, when the Space Shuttle Columbia broke apart on its way back to Earth and 7 people did not come home. In the long, grieving review that followed, one of the casualties was a mission you have already met in this story, the 5th and final visit to Hubble. Every other shuttle flight was going to the International Space Station, where a damaged crew could take shelter and wait for rescue. A flight to Hubble could not reach that shelter. Hubble flew alone in its own high orbit, out of reach of any safe haven. And so NASA's leadership made a decision that was, on paper, unarguable. It was not worth 7 more lives to service a telescope. The mission was canceled. Understand what that was. That was not neglect. That was an agency looking at the empty seats and deciding it would not risk more of them for a machine, no matter how much it loved the machine. But the machine had a public. Astronomers protested. Ordinary people wrote in. Hubble, it turned out, was not just a telescope to the people who paid for it. It was the thing that had shown them the universe. Under that pressure, the decision was reversed, and in May of 2009, the last mission flew after all. 5 spacewalks, new instruments, new gyroscopes, new batteries, and bolted on, at the very end, that ring, the docking point for a rescue that had not been invented yet. Then, the second cut, and this one was meant to be permanent. In July of 2011, the Space Shuttle program ended. The fleet went to museums. And here's the thing people forget. The shuttle was the only vehicle ever built that could reach Hubble and do work there. When it stopped flying, the road to the telescope was not just closed, it was dismantled. We put the only ship that could ever have kept our promise behind glass, and families walked past it on weekends. For more than a decade, that was where things stood. A healthy telescope, sinking slowly, and no way to reach it. And then, Recently, someone offered to build a new road. In 2022, NASA and SpaceX, together with a private crew led by the businessman Jared Isaacman, began studying whether a commercial Dragon capsule could fly up, dock with that ring, and boost Hubble back to a safe altitude, possibly at little or no cost to the taxpayer. A free rescue. The promise, honored by a ship nobody had expected. But when internal NASA emails from that study were later released under public records law, they showed something more complicated than excitement. They showed worry. The mission would need complex spacewalks in commercial suits that had never done that kind of work. It carried real risk to the crew and to the telescope itself. A botched approach could damage the very thing it came to save. And in June of 2024, after one more of Hubble's aging gyroscopes began to fail, NASA gave its answer. In the words of one of its senior scientists, Mark Clampin, "After exploring the current commercial capabilities, we are not going to pursue a reboost right now." He named the risks, the chance of losing years of science too soon, the technical problems still unsolved. Not never. Not yet. Look at what that decision rhymes with. 21 years earlier, this same agency looked at a Hubble mission and decided the risk to human life was too high. Now it looked at another Hubble mission and decided the risk was, again, too high. For now. The caution is not cowardice. It is memory. They have paid this bill before, and they know exactly what it costs to send people back. But there is a price on the other side of that caution, and it is not paid in dollars. It is paid in altitude. Every "not yet" is another season of falling. The safest possible answer, wait, study it more, be sure, is also, quietly, the answer that lets the sky keep winning. Now let me give you the honest version of where things actually stand, because it is less like a countdown than the headlines suggest. NASA is not abandoning Hubble. By its own assessment, the telescope faces no near-term danger of falling. It is expected to stay in orbit into at least the middle of the next decade. The failing gyroscopes forced it into a careful new way of working, running on a single gyro to spare the others. And by NASA's account, that mode barely dents the quality of the science. They put the odds of keeping at least one gyroscope alive through 2035 at better than 70%. The independent trackers, watching the orbit tighten, sketch faster and darker timelines. Some scenarios put a possible re-entry as early as the end of this decade. The truth sits somewhere inside that range, and the width of the range depends on something nobody controls: the sun, which swells the upper atmosphere when it is active and lets Hubble fall faster. The date is not fixed. Do not let anyone tell you it is. So the reboost is deferred, not refused forever. The door is being held open, and that is where I have to take you back to the ring. Everything I have told you has taught you to read that ring one way, as a promise, a place for a rescue ship to dock, proof that we always meant to come back and lift the telescope into the light, and that reading is true, but it is not the whole reading. Read NASA's own engineering description of what that ring was built for, and there is a second sentence, and it is the one that changes everything. The ring will let a future vehicle dock to Hubble. And it will also, in the agency's own words, accept a propulsion module for a controlled and safe eventual deorbit of the observatory. Read that again. The same ring, the same circle of bolts that Astronaut closed by hand on the last day anyone touched the telescope. It was built so a future ship could dock and lift Hubble up, or so a future ship could bolt on a motor and bring Hubble down on purpose and destroy it safely at a time and a place of our choosing. The rescue point and the ending point are the same point. The handle for salvation and the handle for a dignified death are the same handle. That is the turn, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. The astronauts who left that ring behind were not only saying, "We'll come back to save you." They were saying something harder and more honest than that. They were saying, "We'll come back to save you or to end this well. We built you a door, and we built it wide enough for either answer because we did not yet know which one we would need." Can we save Hubble before it falls? Was never really the question. The question the ring was built to hold is the one underneath it. When we finally go back, and the ring says in metal that we always meant to, what will the return be for? Here is why we cannot simply look away and let the sky take it. Hubble is not small. It is about 11,000 kilograms, the mass of a large school bus, wrapped in hardened metal and built around a thick glass mirror. When something that big and that dense comes down through the atmosphere uncontrolled, it does not all burn away. The lightest parts vaporize. The heaviest parts, the mirror, the toughest mechanisms, can survive the fire and reach the ground. Where they come down, nobody can promise in advance. An uncontrolled re-entry of an object this heavy is a recognized ground safety concern. It is not a fantasy of disaster. It is ordinary orbital engineering, which is exactly why that second purpose was built into the ring in the first place. Somebody, back in 2009, sat down and thought carefully about the worst version of the ending. Hubble falling on its own, in pieces, over a place nobody chose, and built a way to prevent it. They engineered the mercy with the same care they engineered the rescue. They gave the telescope a controlled way down before they ever gave up hope of a way up. So understand what doing nothing really is. It is not neutral. It is not safe. The fall is already happening. It has been happening every second since 2009. Waiting does not stop the descent. It only spends the time we have left to decide. The only questions the ring leaves open are when someone finally goes back. And what for? And that is the ache underneath this whole story, though we are never going to say it out loud. Somewhere in your own life, there is, or was, or will be something you kept alive by hand. Something you fixed more than once. Something you swore you would not give up on. And you know how it feels when the way back to it starts to narrow, when the visits get harder to make, when "I'll go back soon" quietly turns into a different kind of question. Not, "Can I still save this?" but "What does it mean to keep my promise now?" You know that the hardest love is sometimes the one that leaves the door open without walking through it, because it cannot yet bear to choose which way to walk. You already know this feeling. The telescope is just where you can finally see it from the outside. Go back to the ring. It is up there right now, tonight, while you watch this, a few hundred kilometers over your head, a little lower than it was last year, moving through the thin dark at roughly 8 kilometers a second. The navigation markers on it are still pointed outward, still facing the empty place a ship would come from. Nothing is approaching. Not yet. We built that ring with our own hands, on the last day we could reach it, and then we retired the only road that led back to it. And someday, the metal insists on this. We will return. The ring was made for a homecoming. It was also made for a funeral. It can receive the ship that lifts the telescope back into the light, and it can receive the motor that guides it gently down into the fire. It was built deliberately to be ready for either one, because the people who bolted it on could not bring themselves to build for only one. The decision has not been made. That is not a failure. That may be the most human thing about the whole story. The door left open on purpose. The choice held off as long as it can honestly be held. The promise kept not by saving and not by releasing, but simply, for now, by not yet letting go. Look up tonight, if the sky is clear. Somewhere in that dark, the ring is still turning, still waiting, still facing outward. We told it we would come back. We still haven't decided what for.